this going. Very good. Well, it's 11 o'clock. It's really good to see everybody. We are, my name's Chris Howland. I admin a Facebook group here in LA called LA Sound Mixers. And the group is about 7 years old now. And it's dedicated to the mentorship and education of production sound professionals everywhere. And but we tend to be LA centric. So this is just a first installment of an interview series. And we're going to ask questions to our friends, notable mixers, about their mentorship experience and their overall, and how it affected their overall development and trajectory of their career. So without further ado, I want to welcome our guest today, two-time Emmy winner, Jan McLaughlin CAS. Thank you for being here.
You're welcome. My pleasure.
How are you doing?
Oh my goodness. Tipsy topsy turvy world these days, but yeah, getting by. Glad I retired when I did.
Yeah, for sure. Well, yeah, I understand that you just retired earlier this year, right?
Yeah, I mean, I stopped working in December. My official retirement date per the IATSE is April 1st, which I thought was kind of poetic.
Very cool. Well, congratulations on being able to put a period on a really fine career, and you know, we're all right there with you.
Super.
So yeah, I wanted to ask you, what was it? I know we've heard your story about how you got started, but and if you want to go over some of that, that'd be great. But I'd also like to know what was it about production sound that drew you into the craft to begin with?
I think it was my first set visits, which were on the set of Law and Order, beginning of season 2. I was watching the estimable sound mixer Bill Daly and his team, who was David Platt swinging the pole, and Joel Holland as a third, and seeing the gear that I was entranced by, and the whole process kind of rang a bell in my soul.
Very cool. And when you first started, did you start out as a mixer, or was it as a utility and boom first?
Well, I was doing sound. I knew I wanted to do sound. I'd always been a gearhead. I'd had a band. So I was the person in the band who had bought the gear and ran it and maintained it. When I first met Joel Holland and Bill Daly, I was working at a big rental house, sound rental house in New York, that did sound rentals for things like the Olympics.
Right.
So I was troubleshooting, checking in and out stuff, learned how to solder and fix, troubleshoot, all of which I've forgotten at this point, because I trust if I'm going to have something done, I want it done by someone who's doing it all the time, and I just wasn't doing all that stuff all the time. But yes, I had some chops back in the day. But I fourthed on Law and Order, which wasn't a paid position. I just kept showing up, and they didn't tell me not to. And eventually they said I could touch stuff, which let me into the truck to inventory and cleaned many thousands of feet of cables, which back then everything had to be hardwired. Even if you were using wires, you had to have an antenna hardwired and walked along just outside the frame. So cleaned many thousands of feet of cable. They had braided the cables back then to make everything work. So unbraided them, cleaned them, put them back together, that kind of stuff, which was the best introduction to production sound I can imagine.
And so what was the prevailing gear in the relative sound packages back then? Were everybody using Nagras and that kind of stuff?
Oh yeah, it was a Nagra, and Bill had a Sela mixer, Electrosonics wireless, and he was in New York, I think one of the, not only a pioneer, but very tight with the fanatics out west when they had gear that they wanted to test. There was a time when they all showed up in New York City, and I was there for the day. We rigged up a van with antennas and stuff, and they rode around the city testing out some new gear with Bill. So we had antennas to the exterior of the van and stuff, and I didn't know enough to even ask a good question at that point. So I just kept my mouth shut mostly and watched what was going on. I think that's my best piece of advice. Don't even ask questions until you can ask a good question.
Yeah, mouth shut and ears open.
Yep.
Cool. And so who were the mentorship figures for you back when in those times? And who are the ones that really gave you the time and the investment and the pivotal guidance?
Well, it was Bill who did.
Bill, what's his last name?
Bill Daly,
Bill
D-A-L-Y. They eventually had a 2-week hiatus, during which time the gear came back to his house, and I was permitted, thankfully, to come and help take it all apart and put it back together again. So I got to clean the mixer and empty the cases, got my hands on every piece of gear he had, and that was the next best thing that I got to do. But Bill was my first mentor, and fast forward, I didn't really have a mentor for many years until after I got in the union.
Okay.
And I started mixing stuff badly, I'm sure. But it wasn't really until I started thirding for another mixer in town, and it was Jan McLaughlin that I worked with next, and Matthew Price. I was very grateful that Peter Schneider left his employment on Sopranos, thirding for Matthew Price to start up Gotham Sound. So I copped that job from Peter.
Nice. And I'm so glad you did, Jan.
Yeah. Oh, Matthew, you're here. Good. I didn't see it. No, that was really magnificent. And it wasn't until I worked with Matthew and John McCormick, eventually, as part of my deal with John, I said, look, I'll third for you, but if a second unit comes up, I'm going to ask that you put my name in the hat. I know you can't guarantee me the job, but just put my name in the hat. And I got to finally do some second unit stuff. And Matthew, God, since you're here, Matthew, there came a Friday evening when Matthew had something on Monday, or I forget what it was. You weren't going to be there, or we had a second unit or something. I don't know.
I don't remember.
And it was after 5 o'clock, and you were desperate. Said you told me I had to do this unit.
That's right.
I hadn't. All I had was an AD. What was it? 244 or something. Mixer, and I needed faders for the scenes that were coming up. And you're like, you can do it. You can do it. And you lent me a mixer. So I didn't even have a chance to check it out until Monday morning. So I get there at like 4 o'clock in the morning, checking it out, and there's a hum in that goddamn thing. There was a ground loop hum, and I had to keep a finger on the shell of the mixer while I was mixing, or else get my third there to ground it until I had a chance to switch it out. I think there were times when I was thinking terrible things about you, Matthew, during that first day.
That old Sony board?
Yes, it was.
Oh, I remember that board. That's the one where you kind of had to hit it in just the right place so your headphones would work?
Fortunately, that the headphones were working fine. I think it was probably monitoring off. I had a DAT. I was off 2-track DAT back then.
Oh, I remember those.
Oh my God.
Very cool. So, I do have a question about your process in joining Local 52. How was that to negotiate? I mean, I just hear stories about how notoriously hard 52 is to join. But can you walk us through a bit of that process? What it was like for you?
Well, I'm a terrible hoop jumper. They are notoriously good at making hoops. There came a time when a director wanted me to mix his movie, but it was a union movie and I wasn't in. So his executive producer was Martin Scorsese and his then ex-wife or wife, Barbara DeFina, and they went to Local 52 and got me in to mix his feature film, his union feature film, on permit. So I wrote to Richard Brick, who was then film commissioner, who had produced an indie film that I had mixed. I said, Richard, the email was, Richard, who do I have to fuck to get into Local 52? Question, love Jan. And he got me a labor lawyer from LA who wrote me a 3-page opinion letter based on Taft-Hartley, said if I worked 30 days, I was presumed competent and they'd had to take me in. Well, this little indie feature worked for 31 days. So on day 32, I called up the hall and I said, so when will I get sworn in? And it was a few months later, he said, come down with your money, and we'll swear you in. So that's how I got in, because I don't like to jump through hoops.
Very good.
I didn't have to fuck anybody.
It's always a good thing.
Yeah.
So looking back on it, what were the, when it came to the various mentors and just your process of getting through it, what were some of the lessons that were most helpful when what did you take away from your mentee experience as you started down your path? What were the lessons that kept coming up and sticking with you?
Well, Matthew Price, Matthew has balls of steel, and it's not the first time I've complimented Matthew in just that way. He had no compunction about putting in a new piece of gear and flying it out the same day he got it. So remaining calm, he's a Buddha, and I'm more unsuccessful than successful at remaining calm under pressure, but it was something aspirational, and certainly he taught me that. And also, I think Matthew kept things pretty small and contained. And I had seen Bill Daley was large and uncontained. And so between those two, I decided that small and contained and fast. The whole follow cart business was fast to put away at night. And I modeled my gear after that, for sure.
Mm-hmm. Very good.
The thing that Johnny McCormick taught me was something about loyalty. And that lesson I'm continually grateful for. Until you understand that and are able to afford people, colleagues, and that you want to ride out with, a certain amount of loyalty, forget it. Because if you screw somebody, and it can be done easily, inadvertently, it can ride with you for a very, very long way. And so loyalty was something that I think once I had the brain space for it and realized, okay, I wanted to get a team together that would stay with me for a while. And that took a lot of work. And building loyalty is like maybe making a croissant, many layers of buttery goodness to keep it flaky and fresh.
Now you're talking my language. Oh, very good. Well, cool. Yeah, go ahead.
Just add on to that something that I've been thinking about since we discussed this whole mentorship. The flip side of the mentorship thing is the menteeship thing. Like Matthew had me to force a job onto before I was ready. And part of being a good mentor is and part of being a good mentee is having mentees. So I gathered, at some point I started gathering sound puppies, and not everybody passed the test. but there's always, 10 or 12 young sound people that I'm mentoring, because I can't be a good mentee unless I've got you've got people that are better than you, people who are coming up, and it's equally important to have both.
Yeah, that's kind of one of the, I guess, philosophies of our LA Sound Mixers group, is that it's really set up so that the group can mentor each other, because I feel like there's people that are much further down the path that can help the people that are coming up behind them, and I firmly believe that somebody with 7 or 8 years experience could have some really good advice and some really good info for people who are only 2 or 3 years into it. And of course, depending on your sphere and the type of jobs you do, that's a huge part of it. But the community is set up so that people within the community can see those questions, those needs come up, and everybody's free to speak up. It doesn't come from just one person.
As a part of my job, is to make sure that I have someone that when the producer comes and say, hey, my daughter's making her first short film, who can do the sound on it, to be able to say, I have just the perfect person for you.
Mm-hmm.
And as part of that, when we were anticipating Local 52 opening up again, I invited, I think, 8 of my dozen or so sound mentees to dinner just before there was a Local 52 meeting. Of course, they couldn't come into the meeting, but I said, look, I'll take you out to dinner. We'll walk over to the hall and I'll introduce you to everybody that I know. And as part of dinner, I had told a couple stories about Joel Holland and my relationship with him as a mentor. And of course, the first person to come into the meeting was Joel. So I got to introduce them to Joel and all the sound people as they came into the meeting. So that's part of how I handled my mentorship.
And that's a really good opportunity for your mentees as well, to be able to get, walked in there to learn the landscape, meet the people. It's huge.
Yeah,
that's very cool.
I said, introduce yourselves, and some of them were mumbling. And as soon as Joel left, I said, next time you say your name so he can hear you and understand your name, because they were all like, woo, and I get it.
Yeah, it's intimidating, I'm sure.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, that's pretty cool. So, how did I wanted to ask you about Nurse Jackie, the episodic TV show that you worked on for a couple seasons. How many seasons was that show actually? That was
7 seasons. I did 6. Billy Sorokin did season 1, and then went on. He was going to do Sex in the City 2 or something out in the desert. Jessica Parker,
Mm-hmm.
and wasn't able to do season 2. So thankfully, I had just worked with a fella whose manager was Edie's manager. And so I got invited to interview for it and got the job that way, because the director, who's working with the Nurse Jackie folks, recommended me highly. We had just finished a movie together. So
very cool.
Yeah.
And in that, how did that workflow progress? Were you given a lot of access during pre-production typically on those seasons?
Never. Not one single movie, not one single television show. I mean, and it keeps getting worse. The last few projects I've done, I showed up for the Tech Scout, and the production manager's like, what are you doing here? I said, well, I'm here for the Tech Scout. And he says, well, you're not invited. I said, really? You're kidding me. And, it's just like, fine.
Had that been the case up to Nurse Jackie? Had you gone on other Tech Scouts and been involved in pre-production? Nurse Jackie was just the odd person out on that?
Well, that was really starting with Nurse Jackie, and even Nurse Jackie, I think I got on the first Tech Scout for the first episode, but after that, I wasn't a part of it. So I expected on television stuff that I'd at least go in the first Tech Scout, so that, it was a matter of respect, so that I could meet the other department heads. And I mean, that's really what it was, more than anything, because in television, by the time you're on the Tech Scout, they're not going to change anything. And the locations people are professional enough. They know what stuff they're going to have to shut off. But I mean, part of the reason I retired is like I got tired fighting those fights every damn day.
Yeah, you kind of feel like a broken record, repeating
Yeah, exactly.
and repeating. You know, it's really tough, you know, to be included on those on the pre-production side of it. I have to fight for it as well on my projects, and the first thing I have to explain to them is, look, I'm not there to poo-poo a location. I'm there to figure out how I'm going to get myself, my gear, and my crew in and out of there safely. That's
Exactly.
it. You know, I'm not there to cast judgment on it.
Yeah, I took to writing up notes that and it seemed like the second AD was the person that ended up covering me at the production meetings. So I would write up my script notes and forward it to them. And hopefully they had the question, you know, so for the phone stuff, does the director want to have the other side of it played back and stuff? And what ended up happening is the directors didn't know. They'd say, well, they don't know yet. I'm like, really? Okay.
Yeah, the level of engagement, it varies greatly from director to director, and especially if you're in episodic television, you know, you have new ones coming in all the time.
So be ready for everything.
Yeah. Well, I mean, tell me if this is the case. So, I mean, I guess you started on season 2 of Nurse Jackie. So, as you got into season 3, 4, 5, where it was was the drill pretty well set, you know, as far as locations go? You knew this is where we shot this is where we shot this. Was there much was there any big changes in that stuff as the seasons went along, or were you able to get pretty well dug in? And
Well, you'd think you'd dig in, and we were fairly well dug in as with using Bellevue for our hospital exteriors until the Ebola thing hit. We got
yes.
out of Bellevue and had to go down to John Jay College. I mean, Bellevue's on 2nd Avenue, which is a 4 or 5 lane high commercial one-way street, buses, truck route through the city, which was awful.
Yeah.
You know, not to mention the ambulance thing and the fact that that hospital services a lot of disabled people who live in the neighborhoods and crazy people. So there were literally hundreds of sort of crazy people hanging around just in the neighborhood. That was difficult. But so then they moved us to John Jay, which was 11th Avenue, which is a similar commercial truck, bus, garbage station, waiting zone. Moreover, I think Donald Trump was constructing a bunch of buildings across the street from us, which in Manhattan, they have to pile drive things through the bedrock.
Right.
And that was 2 seasons worth of pile driving.
Wow.
So
how was your relationship with your dialogue editing team and your post team on that? Were you having to go back and forth with them and keep them posted? And
well, I was using Movie Slate by then, and I would take a picture of the dozen, like 12 by 25 steel 3-inch thick steel plates that were covering the holes in the road that the traffic was going over, and
clanking like crazy.
And I really did practice my pithy prose descriptive of it. I was lucky to have Gotham Sound do a thing with me and Steve Bourne, who was the dialogue guy for Nurse Jackie, where we got to arrange a little presentation together at SVA, School of Visual Arts, together. And until then, we hadn't had much communication. I would send my pithy reports and photographs and stuff. And it wasn't until then that I learned that, yeah, they did appreciate it. But there was I had a lot of forething, but there was no back until we actually had to work together to do a presentation. And I guess they're all busy as we are, evidently. So I'm glad that I didn't lose heart not
Yeah,
having no news is in fact good news.
for sure. For sure. It's funny. I had um, a, a really good re-recording mixer reach out to me and ask, what is it that we can do to help you in production? And one of the things I told her was, in as production sound people, we're on the set and we very, very seldomly actually get the attention of the above the liners to help us with our problems and to even just get them to hear us out. And it's always the tough thing. And I said, if you find yourself on the re-recording stage and you have their undivided attention, just keep in mind that's something we don't have. So anything you can do in those moments to say this, trust me, that would help us out big time. And who knows whether or not those lessons would actually help those above the line people get better and maybe give us a little more consideration during the process. But that's the one distinct advantage they have in post is they have their attention. They're sitting right there. They're passing notes back and forth, and they're really putting the coverage under the microscope. So,
Well, went to the writers over the course of a few seasons just to say, if you write that the actors cross the street, we get to hold the traffic. Just putting it out there. And so they started doing that actually. And I'm like, oh my God, I love you guys so much. Thank you. So sometimes, get around I'm not a hoop jumper, but I do like thinking outside the box. So that's cool.
Yeah. And whenever you can work out your solutions to benefit the crew as a whole and not just the sound coverage, that helps too. So let's see. So I guess some of the more challenging setups you ran into, does anything ring a bell as far as, because you're in New York and most of your career, just looking back on it, you did a lot of dialogue coverage. A lot of your stories that you helped tell were humans talking to each other in delicate dialogue situations in one of the noisiest cities in the world. So that's one of those things. How I know every setup it's one by one, but what was in your arsenal to deal with that and to come out with the results that you came out with, which was great.
Well, the rule in New York is if it's exterior, 99.9% of the times you wire them. Mm-hmm. And even if you don't, that 0.01% that you might not wire them, you wire them anyway. Just to, it's just kind of like, yeah, that's going to save you. I'm reminded with your your big question there. I went to the screening of a movie that I had done that was a period piece. And as I walked into the theater, the director was there and he says, I'm really, really sorry about that one location. And I'm like, and then it was time to go in. So that's all I really got. So there was what ended up being about a 20-minute scene with the incredible Tracy Letts as one of the two characters. And I'm hearing like the bottom is gone from his voice. And it was like it was awful. All the high and low was gone. And it was a long scene. It was like 18 pages or something. And with each second that's passing, I'm feeling sick at my stomach and I'm thinking maybe I'll have to leave the room. So over the course of the next 3 months and selected emails to this director, because I couldn't really say, God damn it, that sucked. What happened to Tracy Letts' voice? He eventually came clean and he said, well, they had about 2 weeks for post sound on this little teeny movie. And evidently they put what they called an optical track filter on it because this was a location for this period piece that was on 125th Street and Broadway that had a tremendous number of contemporary horns, motors, and sounds. And the only way that they could quickly deal with it was to just cut out all the low end to get rid of the buses and the trucks. And I'm like, oh, so it wasn't that I fucked up, because I'm thinking, what did I do to the sound? I mean, it sounded good, better to me on the day. But it took me about 3 months and many, many sleepless nights to get there gracefully to ask the director. I fell just short of saying, I'll give you $20,000 to remix the thing. God damn it, it's awful. But yeah.
Oh man.
Sometimes there's nothing you can do. And it was the one location that we had in the city. All the other stuff was done out of the city. And it came out very well, I thought.
Mm-hmm.
But that one location for that very long scene, borked.
God, and the longer the scenes get, the less likely it is you'll get a completely clean take. So
Precisely.
But that's I remember my mentor used to use the term for all those things you can't control, you dance between the raindrops. And
dancing in the raindrops there.
Yeah.
It was just, because we shot it for 2 days, this scene.
Mm-hmm.
And so there were a lot of takes, and
yeah.
Fortunately I wired them.
Mm-hmm.
So they were able to pull it out, but my God.
When you're wiring talent, have you ever gotten significant pushback from talent on certain times, just not wanting to wear one, or not just, and if so, how would you and your crew deal with that? I mean, and that's another question. Who are your go-to crew people that you like to work with?
Well, Brendan O'Brien is my go-to boom operator. He's an awesome diplomat, very smart, politic guy. He is also a poet. He can buy us time and make us still look good. He's a genius at that. And the other person that I would ride out with for the apocalypse is Joe Riglieri. The last boom operator, though, Brendan has started being paid to write, which is where he wants to live. So he wasn't with me on this last project with Edie Falco. It was Gideon Jensen, who's equally amazing boom operator. So
very good. And were they just a natural complement to your personality, as far as tendencies go, and the way they kind of deciphered what was going on the set and the setting the priorities of the department?
Well, we've worked together so many years. I mean, when Brendan came to me, he was still pretty young. I think by the 3rd season of Nurse Jackie, he came back in the first day of season 3 or 4, and we had a lot of glass in this hospital set, and usually I would have to wire for him, and he said, "No, I got this." I said, "Really?" I said, "All right." And I started to cry once I heard it. He did have it, and he says, "Yeah, I just finished Black Swan," which was a whole land of pain of mirrors. He learned reflections on that gig, and I was the beneficiary of that. So through my tears, my happy tears.
That's pretty great. You always bring those lessons from the last job to your next one, and that's
we grew up together kind of, because I hadn't. Nurse Jackie was my first TV show, sitting in the catbird seat. So yeah, we grew up together.
That's pretty cool. And so so as your career started wrapping up, I remember you just had a big gear sell off. You were selling off all your stuff. How many in the last year you were doing it, how many sound packages did you maintain? Do you have more than one, like a smaller one and a bigger one, or?
Yeah, I have a bag and a cart, and it's the same gear, so that if it serves as my backup as well. So, and I like, it's, if I go from one to the other, it's seamless. Right.
Very good. And yeah, that's pretty cool. I was going to ask about, and you don't have to say amounts or anything, but I was going to ask about rates, like gear rental rates, specifically from the time you started and with your first sound package. I mean, was your, so many people have commented that the gear rental rate was pretty flat as you got to into the 90s, into the 2000s. The more gear that we're expected to bring has increased, but the rate kind of stayed flat. In your experience, was that the same? Was that the same for you as well, or were you able to negotiate some increases for yourself?
It was, Billy Sorokin had Nurse Jackie before I did, and so the rate was higher for it. And I'm like, holy shit, good. And when the Emmys came on Nurse Jackie, I got bold, and I realized part of the loyalty thing, I couldn't ask for more for me, but on behalf of my team, and that's what I put in my heart and soul when I went to the line producer before the whatever season it was. And so for my team, I'm riding the first Emmy wave, and I said so. And I raised it up quite a bit, and then I just sort of made a decision. And this is what I told myself, is that I want to be the highest paid sound mixer in New York City. Fuck it, I'm going. And so I put that in my mind and kept asking for more, asked above contract.
Thank you, Jan.
Yeah.
You're welcome. And ultimately, this last thing, because Edie had asked for me to come on this CBS show, I had some leverage, and I leveraged right. I got $690 a day from CB fucking S.
Nice.
And
everybody write that down.
But yeah.
Well, congratulations. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
That is pretty cool. And so, and so towards the end, so what kind of gear were you using towards the end there? Mixers, recorders?
Mm-hmm. I was Oasis, Nomad, Saxcom wires. And because I went for light, small. And although I really missed the audio developments board, there was a little warmth that I lost. I lost a little bit of EQ because I'd like to play a little bit with the mid-range with certain characters that I would consistently give somebody a little boost in the mid for this. I never took anything away, but I kind of missed that because it would make my mix a little better. But then contiguously with the switch over to Oasis that didn't have that EQ, my mixes evidently no longer mattered except for dailies. Right. So I gave that up.
Okay. Yeah. So workflow wise, your mix was so they had enough time in audio post to do a rebuild of the mix from the ISOs, that kind of stuff.
Well, anecdotally, cable devotes more money to post sound. Nurse Jackie had 3 days for the mix. Network shows, and that was a half-hour show. Yeah. Network shows have 1 day for the mix for an hour show. So they don't give a shit. Now, I did go to certain people at CBS about it and addressed it. I said, part of the, a creative guy from CBS showed up on set, and I took him aside. I said, what are you doing here? And he said, well, we're trying to get better. I said, well, since you're in charge of getting better, getting more audience, one of the things that you guys do, I notice, is they're all wires all the time, and I can hear it, and it's not real. And people can hear that. You don't hear things in perspective. I said, they don't even know that they don't believe it anymore.
Yeah.
But it's subconscious. So, and that's a problem. So I don't know where that even went. And I also went to the post-production supervisor about it.
Yeah.
I don't know if it ever went anywhere, but I started out wiring everybody. And eventually, as I learned, because it was a new boom operator, as soon as I knew he had his proper chops, for the wides, we left it wide on the boom 95% of the time. And I went to just wiring as necessary, the way I did it. And by God, the show sounds great. There's perspective and everything.
Yeah.
So,
I think so much of that is missing in the storytelling now. There's
oh,
so
it's
much of the
huge.
dialogue is so dry that
It's
you,
not real. It's artificial.
yeah. And
People know it.
yeah, yeah, that's the other thing is I remember cutting vocal tracks when I was, you know, producing music for a living, and you know, I would have to get singers to enunciate. It's like people don't know what you're saying. You've heard this song 1,000 times. You wrote the lyrics. You know what it's supposed to sound like, but you know, there's just certain things in a performance. Same with dialogue. You know, people sitting at Village have all read the script 100 times. They know what words are coming, so they don't really look for intelligibility.
Well, that's the one thing that I will speak up about is the intelligibility. And only when it's moving the story forward. If somebody's just blathering and it's an emotional thing, I'm pissed, is the message. Like, I'm not going to say, well, we didn't understand that. But if it's information that the audience needs and I'm not hearing it, I go to the script supervisor.
Mhm.
I say, intelligibility, then run away. But yeah.
I could have them add it to their notes. And
Well, the script supervisor is in the best position to have the right timing to speak to a director to get the message to the actors. And on the other hand, my timing is not always good to get away from the cart or go there. And that's something that I feel needs to come from me, but it's not something that I think that, sometimes the boom operator can deliver that message, but
mhm.
that's a big ask. It's better if I'm walking on to set, I know the PAs are like, uh-oh, Jan's coming, you know?
Yeah.
So, and it means something.
Yeah, the relationship with the script supervisor is a hugely important one in narrative filmmaking. They can certainly uh, keep you from being burned in effigy, and they can also move that information for you.
I want to take a little note. I haven't looked at the other screens, but I'm seeing an awful lot of other women in the room. Yes. Awesome, ladies. Brilliant. Just a little side note.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. No, that's awesome. I just I want to thank everybody for being so patient and quiet and you know, taking this in with us. I really appreciate that. Please have your questions ready, because once I get to the end of my page here, we're gonna do the Q&A section where, you know, raise your hand and ask some questions, and you know, this is really a rare opportunity, because I got to say, Jan doesn't do that many interviews, so she's not one to put herself in front of the camera like this. So it's really a treat for us, and I really appreciate you doing it, Jan.
I'm very select, and that it was you, Chris, was a big win for me, and I love that you wanted to talk about mentor-mentee, and it's really without mentors and mentees relationships, you go nowhere. And I sort of want to circle back that lately my mentors have been Eric Toline, Jeff Wexler, Whit Norris, Al McGuire, a bunch of guys that I've been video conferencing with as of February, 9 years. Every Saturday and Sunday we get together and we have mentored each other, not only about the sound business, but about the business stuff, the psyops that we play with the UPMs, all of that stuff. We have helped one another. And most importantly, recently I watched both Eric and Jeff and Al through their retirement. They retired before me, and that was the most important thing, to have actually been connected weekly to people who went through the process.
Yeah.
For me to be able to, I think I feel very, very lucky. I think I did it very gracefully.
Yeah, for sure.
It's over.
Yeah, for sure. That's one of the things that I guess one of the most common pieces of advice I give out to people, that I always get new people calling me that are getting started and want to know, just to get a sense of what's ahead of them. And one of the things I always tell them is you've got to network. You've got to network in your own community. You have to not only get to know who's working in your community and what kind of stuff they're doing, but you have to find those 8 or 10 personalities that you have a lot in common with, that their personality resonates with you and you resonate with them, and make those people part of your inner circle. You know, when you have those questions that you're like, I don't know if I want to put this on an open forum. Well, you don't. You go to your inner circle first. And those are the people that have your back.
The one upside of ZaxCom that I don't think everybody views as an upside is that I had to become a much better engineer
Mm-hmm.
To work with ZaxCom stuff. And what made me a better engineer was that if I had a question, I realized I had to go to other people who used the same gear.
Right.
And, the Billy Sorokin, Jeff have really been exceptional. Also, John Blankenship, and who uses ZaxCom wires for the NFL stuff. All great resources for me in terms of my gear community. You need a community around your gear. I don't know about any other gear, because since 2009 I've been all increasingly all ZaxCom, and it's a really strong community of users of that gear. And it's not something to take lightly. You need to know who's using your stuff, not only for just that 11 or 2 a.m. issue that somebody that you can call at 2 a.m. and say, holy shit. But on, another night to say, hey, boy, I love that new update. Whatever. It's not to be sniffed at. Yeah,
for sure. For sure. Well, I had one more question to ask you. I'm always fascinated by mixers who live and work in New York, because the logistics of moving the gear around, especially when you've kind of graduated to cart work and you're taking around a cart, a bag, and a follow cart. Is that stuff that you were able to keep it in your home, and did production come and pick it up, or did you ever have to move it on your own? That kind of stuff.
Part of the reason I decided I wanted to live in narrative was that they do in New York, it's sort of house rules. In New York, they send a truck to you. They used to send the camera truck out here, and I'd load it here, because I have a loading dock and a freight elevator right over there. And I would just load it on for the duration of the project. Camera trucks are typically shared by Sound Video Assist in New York. So I don't have to deal with that. I am, and for which I'm really, really grateful that I'm in New York. Other towns do it differently, as I'm well aware, but it's a great thing not to have to worry about it. And some of my best relationships professionally have been with the Teamsters. Right. Having learned that you mess with the Teamsters at your peril in New York. I've been watching other mixer just like drown.
Yes, it's the same here in LA as well. So it's yeah, they can definitely make your life difficult if they want to.
Oh, beautiful.
And can make your life extremely easy if they want to. So well, cool. You sent me some pictures. I'd love to check these out if that's okay. Let's see. I'm going to share screen here. Let's see. Hopefully everybody can see that. I love it. These pictures of you and Nicole. I love that. Hopefully everybody can see that. Give me a thumbs up if you can see that. Yeah. Okay. Cool. So what? I see you back there. In both of these pictures, actually. There's another one. There's that one as well.
The look on my face is close to the look of death that a photographer has ever captured. This was a low budget movie. Jason Bateman was directing and acting as number 2 on the call sheet, and we had gone out to do a very simple fake documentary interview. So I said, well, I'll just take the wires and the boom. I'll record to the SD cards because it was down by a lake, and I won't bring the cart. We'll just do it on that. So I didn't have a cart, just the SD cards on the transmitters. And so while we're down there, they said, oh, you know what? This is exactly where we want to shoot the jogging scene. Now you'll see that their t-shirts are all wet. This is captured from the 2 of them running up and down a hill. And for me to go get the cart then and go immediately into that jogging scene would have been like an hour. I said, fine, So I had no way of monitoring what was on, but I had all the right stuff. I had made a special rig for Nicole, knowing that this scene was coming up. So that worked out just dandy. But each time they came down, I was watching them like a hawk. And that's me watching them like a hawk to make sure that everything was still.
And that's a pretty cool thing about the Zaxcom workflow, is that it allows you to do that, to just use the the recorders on the transmitters to record in those situations. How much how long did it take you after? This is what I'm always curious of. How long after you pulled the cards at the end of the day and had to get it prepared to turn into post? How long did that take you? Did you have to do it all in real time, or?
Well, no, you just enter the time code in and out, which I had from the recorder, because I had the time code there, so I took note of the beginning time code and end time code, and I just took it out in one big file that I later went back, because it's Nicole, and there was lots of time in between takes that I cut out all the in between stuff to protect her. So that took several hours of cutting.
Okay, so that did take some time.
But, normally I would just send the whole goddamn file. And at the beginning of a job, I tell the editors, I said, you have a sacred task here not to let this in-between stuff come through.
Right. Right. And can you see both of these pictures side by side here?
Yep.
This is your main mix cart?
Yeah, that's sort of the 2009 iteration on Nurse Jackie, when I had the RX 4900s and the audio developments mixer.
Ah, okay, yeah. See, okay, so on the right picture, that's the audio developments, and on the left you have the Oasis.
Yeah.
Was there a lot less power draw with the Oasis?
Significantly less power draw.
How cool is that?
Very light, which I loved. And 15 pounds worth of XLR cables went away.
Yeah, and is that a Magliner Mini or a Magliner Junior?
It's a Magliner Mini.
It's a smaller one, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I've had Magliners for my whole career. The first card I had was a Gemini Junior that eventually was made into the follow card.
Very good. Very good. What else is in here? Oh, this is the, is this that like an 18-wheeler trailer?
Yeah. And as part of my process, when I'd load into the truck, it gets photographed. So I know it's all, I have a record of what was loaded in.
You do that every day or just at the beginning of the show?
Load in.
Okay. Very good. Yeah, I was going to say, if it was every day, that's...
Nah. There's a couple shows. That's on Rabbit Hole with the Nicole Kidman thing.
Ah, okay. Very cool. And where was that in New York? Was that?
Well, this was up north a little bit in a state park. We had an old house there that was the main location for the Family Fang. No, that was Family Fang. So it was in the middle of a state forest. No airports or anything.
Wow, that must be a refreshing change.
Oh my God.
You hear things like footsteps and a whole different array of sounds, but...
Well, no, there was really no sound out there unless the Teamsters drove through.
Or Jenny's and that sort of thing. Yeah, I love this.
Yeah, I'm not above bribing directors and DPs with swag.
That's very creative.
Well, you have to.
Well, it seemed to work. Did it work in this case?
Yeah, it did. The executive producer / director queen gave us our matching headroom. If it was wide, they were all wide.
Good. Yeah, that's huge. That's huge. And this is, yep, another view of the Magliner Junior with the audio developments.
Yep.
Whose organ is that? That's pretty.
That was my grandfather's organ, and I actually gave that to Glenn Sanders at Zaxcom, who got it back up and working.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How cool is that? That's interesting. And you're actually, you live in New Jersey, right? You're
Yeah,
not
I've lived in Jersey since 2004.
very
There's
good.
a couple of shots of a wooden box. There's,
Yes, right
yeah.
here.
So when I first started out, uh, this was my first case, quote unquote.
Uh-huh. Let's
I I
try and get
had
it where we can see both.
I inherited those milk crates from my ex-husband went in the divorce. Uh, but I carried a couple of those around with me, some of which had nothing in them because I didn't have any gear to go in them. So that's the one remaining from that era of my career.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Silver platter potato pancake gal.
Yeah, I don't know where I got that name from, but
Well, you have a background in poetry, so
yeah, I
some
do.
some wordsmithing going on there, I'm sure.
Oh yeah. Well, it served me well to be able to poetically and precisely, concisely convey words to people who needed information or, that I had to communicate with. If you
Yeah,
can put at the same time, it helps.
right. Is this in this picture, is there this was some playback stuff going on? That
Something.
yeah, looks like what is that program? I'm looking for it because I have it here. Audacity, right? That's Audacity up there.
Yeah, we had some music or something that we had to play for that.
Do you remember which show this was?
This was Tommy,
Ah, okay.
my last show.
Ah, because it says right there, Tommy. Oh, cool. All right. Well, very cool. I would say we'll come out of this and let's do our what else did I have? Oh, you know what? I have one last question before we get to the Q&A. How how would you decompress after an intense day on set? You get home, what would you do to relax, to just unravel everything that's gone on in the day? Because we deal with that from day to day, and it's easier for some of us than others. But what was your specific drill just to decompress after a long day?
Well, I'd meditate.
Good.
Yeah. And that just fell right. It's probably a bad meditative process to let meditation flow into sleep, but that worked for me.
Very good. So that was part of the ritual.
Yeah, pretty much. No, I don't. I over the years I stopped listening to music because my ears just needed to rest.
Sure. Yeah.
I have audio input anymore. It's like too much.
Yeah, that's the thing is conventionally people would listen to soothing music or something like that, but yeah, your ears are tired, your brain is tired. So no, that's very, very good advice. Well, very good. Well, so we'll go to the Q&A portion here. If you could, everybody, if you have a question, just hit the little raise hand icon so it pops up in the participants list, and we can go by that. And I see the first person who's done it is Carl Weldon, and I can try and go down the list that way.
All right, I've unmuted. Can you hear me?
There you go. Hey, Carl.
Hello there, and I wanted to say hello to Jan. I met you at the Stockade Works Sound Intensive, where we were facilitators up in Kingston, and I was excited to see you on the Zoom thing today. I remember something about when you were talking to everybody about your battles for matching headroom and that that flag. But there were some parts of it I wanted to hear again. If you could get into that.
Well, it became a kind of motto for me. And I not only produced, that was a tea towel that was draped over that director's chair, but I also made cocktail napkins and various other, I had bottles of wine made up with matching headroom things, and other clever poetic phrases on them. I think that the best use of the matching headroom for the win was we let's see, So two people talking, very intimate scene, they're walking in together, and the director decided to go wide and tight. So I take the tea towel and I come running across the lawn. I was probably 25 yards away. So I'm waving the thing in the air as I'm running across the lawn. I'd more say it was loping, so it was a little bit of a performance. Across the lawn at a long enough pause, just went up to the director, held it up to him, and then stuffed it in his hand and then ran away. I didn't have to say a word. And did it work that time? No. Fine. But I got along with Adam Bernstein super well. I worked with him a lot. In fact, I think, this ended up doing a bunch of things with Adam Bernstein. This is the one that I got and kept. He's an awesome director, an awesome man. Wait, have I even gotten it? Yes.
Yeah, perfect.
He's a great director and a great human being. So, but I gave it my best shot.
Very cool.
I love the clever workarounds and little promotional angles, and just putting it out there as a subliminal thing, but then more overtly. And it stuck with me when you talked to us upstate that time. Anyway, thanks for doing this today.
Oh, you're welcome. I'm so happy to do it because I feel like this is the last time I get to opine on anything.
I hope not, because we have an ongoing discussion in this community, and I just because you're retired doesn't mean we don't want to hear from you, Jan. So please.
I'm finding it hard for me to give a shit about any of it anymore.
Chris,
I can understand that.
Chris, I would really like to chime in on what since the topic originally was mentoring, and Jan mentioned me and Al and Eric. One of the other things that Jan said about mentoring, even though you did describe it sort of as a hierarchy, those people that have had more experience, talking to people who have less experience and all that. But I have to say that, the last 8 or you said it was 9 years that Jan has been having these Sounder Days with our group. I've learned so much from Jan, not about, an individual piece of equipment or any of the rest of that stuff, but just getting the knowledge from someone else who's, doing the same job that I did for years and years. But just learning other ways of dealing with problems, dealing with relationships, dealing with stuff. And so I think if we ever look at the mentoring and mentee thing as being always stratified, and it's only the more experienced people talking to the less experienced people and all sort of stuff, I think we're losing part of the reason why we have these sort of discussions. And I just want to thank you publicly, Jan, for all of the help that you've given me, even when I've been retired and I'm not even going to be doing the work anymore. It's still, there's an intrinsic value in understanding, the way you've approached things and the way you've dealt with stuff, And I know a lot of times people think it's just like telling war stories. Oh yeah, I had this director that was so-and-so, whatever. And, all of that's okay also, but underneath it all, you can find some really, really important stuff to digest. So
yeah,
thank you, Jan.
Yeah, and thank you, Jeff. That's a very fair point to make. That I learned from my mentor, and for everything that he taught me, he would also tell me that that's why he loved to teach, was because it keeps him fresh, it keeps him learning.
Never stop learning. Yep.
Never stop learning, and that's a very excellent point to make. Thank you, I appreciate that. Let's see, we had a hand up from Mike Barber. I wanted to see if he still had a question, and if anybody else has a question, you can do the little hand raising gesture on the chat. But Mike Barber, are you around? Do you still have that question?
Yeah, can you hear me okay? I just unmuted my mic.
Yeah, there you are. How are you?
Good, thanks. Thanks. Greetings from Toronto, Canada. I'm loving this presentation, and I'm actually like really early in my career. I've moved from visual effects into onset sound over the past like little while, and I've been doing a lot of these or watching a lot of these online presentations from a lot of veterans in the industry, which I'm really grateful for. And one trend that I was really interested to hear about is uh, kind of a tedious topic in some ways, but controversial, is room tone. I'm used to the old wisdom of it's better to have it and not need it than need it and not have it. But something that has come up when other people ask about it is a trend of people saying that they more and more don't really worry about trying to get everybody to lock down for 30 to 60 seconds to get good room tone because of modern post processes using isotope or whatever. I'm just curious to know what your experience is in that, like if it's the trend towards going forward has been like less and less and less of worrying about recording that stuff.
Well, starting, I guess, in probably 2008, 2009, I started having enough brain space to really pay attention to when there was a 3-second pause or a 5-second pause. And I started adding that to my sound reports. And my sound reports are color coded because the PDF in Movie Slate allows that to go through. And it turns out they were printing my sound report, so it did have the color coding. So if I had tone that I heard, if there was a pause, I would make a note of it. So the only times that I would ever ask for it was when, for example, if it started raining in the middle of a take, that was, we had several other takes without it. I would get room tone there. And then what I decided to do, rather than pausing it, I would put out a mic somewhere away from and have just a track dedicated to tone. For example, we had a situation where all of a sudden the kids' softball league started playing and it was getting to the set. So I put out a mic specifically for that. I put out a mic specifically well away for crickets, things like that. So that's how I kind of got around it. But I haven't done room tone in a very long time because I know it's there. I'm paying it. That's one of the things that I'm paying attention to.
Can I jump in just for a second here? It's Mark Ulano.
Hey
guys.
Mark Ulano.
How you doing, buddy?
Good.
There's another piece to this, and that is the way room tone is being used or created has really changed creatively and technically. It's less about the respect for the shutdown in the set as a means to avoid the expense of that time expenditure. It's more about the fact that the technique for room tone has migrated to the in-betweens of even words. They're building room tone from the scene itself because it's the most comprehensively accurate reproduction of the spaces that they need from the room tone. The whole idea of room tone is to fill in for editing between words where you have to lose things, but they're using the real space in the scene much more. So, and it's much easier to do that now. They can, collect all the different in-between spaces and assemble a tone that's accurate to the tone, because you can do tone at 9 in the morning and the reverses are done at 4 in the afternoon when the traffic's bad, and you could be in a situation where the tone may not actually reflect what's needed for the actual cuts within the scene. And then the second thing is, if there are signature sounds and signature environments that are unique for that, you then still have the option to say this is necessary and do what Jan is describing, to go ahead and gather that particular unique piece that needs to be added because it's specific to the needs of the scene, the storytelling of the scene.
Very true.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate that.
Very good. And are there any other questions?
Thanks, Mark. That was great. Yeah. Didn't realize that was you.
He's there lurking. It's so CC McMillan. You are up.
Sorry, I didn't unmute myself.
There you are. How are you?
Okay, thanks for having me.
Absolutely.
Really great to be on this chat.
What's your question?
I was curious on how usually I guess I'm opening this up to the floor, particularly to Jan, but to anybody who has advice on how, let's say if a live band or live music and incorporating that in terms of like how they have to have, their live music set up, obviously coinciding with what a mixer and the team is doing to record the dialogue. I'm just thinking about one of the last episodes, like on for example, Madam Secretary, for the wedding. There was sort of an elaborate setup that we had to do, and I was curious on input as far as any experience that anybody has on that, or.
So you're talking about how to differentiate a music performance within a feature or a narrative piece and dialogue while that music is going on.
And depending upon how the director, the producers want that music picked up, how they want you to record that versus, like what that you have to obtain as far as the dialogue. And
I had a bunch of that on the last movie that I did that may or may not come out now, which was the Sopranos prequel. We had a live band, a couple of different times, different bands. And what we ended up doing was we did a pre-record. We had earworms for them. I also hired another team to come in to mic up, specifically to mic the live performance. Mm-hmm. And then on the day, it was decided, depending upon what we were seeing, when that would cut out and they would mime and stuff if it was even necessary. Some of them, it wasn't necessary because the band was actually people speaking. So they would play and then the lead singer would speak, and that was the heart of this scene. Another thing, it was a band in a club, dinner club. So we did see them sometimes behind them, and we would start out the scene before the dialogue with them actually playing live. And I had another team come in. We had to rent, that team had to rent period microphones and stuff. And of course, all that stuff had to be tested and stuff. So yeah, that was something that it came up in the production meeting. Of course, we didn't really, it didn't come up on anybody's radar until probably the week before it was scheduled. But, I kept niggling everybody, and as I saw the schedule, was keeping the teams apprised of how the schedule was going and keeping them in touch with the props people and all that kind of collaboration, making sure everybody was going to be able to test them and everybody was happy with the visuals and stuff. So yeah. Does that answer your question a little bit? Someone else
the key thing in answering that question, though, is whether you really are going to have to do the music live along with dialogue, or whether you're going to do it to playback. Because there's certainly instances where you may be required to record the band to then use that track as a playback track, and you're going to end up actually shooting to playback. That's one situation. Someone actually, was Chris Harris, was saying that it really, really requires planning, so that everyone knows what it is you're trying to achieve. So obviously you're trying to achieve a scene where you have a band playing and you have people talking. That's what the audience is supposed to experience. But how you actually are going to do it is pretty complex. And if you just get thrown into a situation where they say, well, let's just let the band play, and then maybe we'll have them mime for a little bit and we can do some lines, and then we're going to shoot from another camera angle, and well, maybe the band should be playing something different now, because, that's like a total disaster. And as a sound mixer, you will never be able to solve those problems without, when done properly, the music editor should be around to discuss this. The director should understand what it means to try and shoot music and dialogue, certainly at the same time. The DP has to be aware of how important it may be that to shoot this part of the dialogue and not see the band in that shot. Otherwise, if you see the band in every shot, then you're into huge editorial difficulties, way beyond any difficulty you might perceive in trying to record the band properly, to have that so sounds good and all, because it's not really a sound issue anymore. It's becomes a real editorial and filmmaking issue.
Thanks, Jeff. That's everything I wanted to point out to you.
The key is having, when you read the script, you know it's coming up. You get the second AD involved, and you try to get the music supervisor involved early, because they're going to decide how they have negotiated whether or not we're going to do it to playback, which is always, for editorial, they really need the consistency. Right. And all that kind of stuff. But yeah, the music supervisor is your friend there.
Yeah, and you just have to approach them and nicely ask, how are we planning on doing this? And that relates to, the equipment or the personnel that you're going to need there, but more to the point of, filmmaking. How are we going to do this so that we have success? So it seems to me that you were asking the question because you were thrown into a situation where nobody asked anything about anything. They just said, okay, we got a band and they're going to be playing, and we got people and they're going to be talking. And, I don't know if I'm presuming too much, but.
I was merely observing, and I thought to myself, if I had been thrown into that situation, that, and then to me, I figured to some degree, people had to anticipate. Yeah. I presume that people are checking in and, doing those
and
things.
Also, if you're seeing the finished product, as an audience and trying to analyze, you probably don't know if they've done it properly. You don't know whether they did it to playback or whether they did it live or whether they did it to playback with live vocals or whether they redid everything, in ADR. It's done properly. It should the audience should be able to experience it as the scene was intended.
Very good. Very good. Well, thank you for that question, CC. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, we'll move on to Carlos Corral.
Hey guys, can you hear me?
Yeah, how are you?
Great. Actually, I have a question for Jan, but also I think Jeff and Eric can probably chime in on this, even you too, Chris. So eventually, hopefully we all get back to work someday, but I'm kind of wondering how you guys, I know you're retired, Jan, but what kind of change do you see in the industry now in the future, especially now with wires? It's a very intimate process. We're very up close to the talent a lot. I kind of feel like boom ops are going to really make a big comeback now, but do you think the higher ups are going to actually consider what we have to say in regards to, I guess, making new policy for film productions or TV productions now?
It's a very big question, which is being discussed almost continuously amongst all of us. I think at 10 o'clock today, there's going to be a major discussion with producers actually about this very issue. And I'll let someone else speak because I don't want to dominate, but there's speculation is, all over the map in terms of what will happen, with some people saying, well, nothing's going to change. And certainly the low budget, non-union productions that basically have been abusing people all along anyway, even prior to coronavirus, probably will not institute anything. Higher budget and, union shoots and all will certainly have to be making certain changes, because I think it'll even be dictated from the insurance companies, and hopefully it'll be dictated also from human decency and reality, that certain things will have to change. But it's whether we will end up not wiring people as much, whether we'll end up with smaller crews, whether we'll end up being able to boom things more. It's really, it's just speculation at this point.
Yeah, and I think really the real movers are going to be the insurance companies and the stars.
Yep, the actors, absolutely.
And so I don't, I can see I appreciate that speculation has become the new national sport. But
yes, since we don't have any other sports, we might as well.
I get it, but yeah, I don't give a shit.
I think Matthew has something to say.
Oh, not really. I just kind of feel that there's going to be situations where you're still going to have to wire. I mean, if you're outside, especially in New York,
Oh, yeah.
I think if you're going to be allowed to be close enough to the actors in the first place, then I think wiring would just be an extension of that. I'm hearing discussions of zones around the camera. You'll have your red zone, your blue zone, where different groupings of crew will be allowed. Camera, obviously, and actors, that there won't be video villages. Everyone will be watching on their individual iPads and devices like that. So things are going to be much more spread apart. But I think if you are cleared to be near the actors, I don't see a real difference between that and actually wiring. But I could be wrong about that.
Yeah, except for those few actors who will just like resist, as they have even in the past, that just, you know, they don't want people touching them. They don't want people, whatever. That may be increased, and you'll just have to deal with it.
They're going to love the situation then. The ones who don't want to be touched in the first place. But yeah, there's a show starting up somewhere where they're talking about only touch-ups on actresses, and actors don't get any makeup at all. And
I know, yeah.
I don't know how that's going to work. The
crew people serving as background, right? Yeah.
Yes, I saw that.
There's so many.
We get tag cards then also. We get tag pay.
Yeah, walk through the shop with a fishbowl, and you know,
exactly.
Pretend that you're somebody else.
There's so many different ways that this could shake out. It's so hard to speculate. But one thing's for sure is that there's an incredible amount of data being gathered, you know, by our own 695 committee, and then almost every local in LA also has committees. They're all just gathering information on how this could affect their personal workflows for their particular craft. So it's a huge undertaking, and so yeah, I mean, we'll keep everybody updated as it's going along. And you know, I think it'll affect different types of productions, different ways. It'll be different as according to geographical region as well. I think, you know, sets that are shooting in New York or in LA where the population is very compressed, there's going to be certain protocols in place that may not be in place in more rural locations.
So do you think, and just a small little follow-up to that, do you think it'll differ state by state? Because I feel like New York and California are really going to try to lead on this. But, you know, for me, I'm in Texas, you know, for Local 484, and I feel like Texas is going to be way more relaxed than that. Will that make people want to go to different states just based on the kind of policies they set?
Well, the above line has a huge influence on where their shows actually shoot. And I think a lot of that will be based on where they feel comfortable. And but yeah, I do feel like states and you know, sets run in places like Texas or in Kentucky or in you know, those are going to be different. They're going to have a little bit more lax rules, and I think, I mean, all of this will it'll vary just depending on your physical space that you're shooting in. Is there a small room you're having to deal with, or are we in a big nice open space? I mean, it's just, I think a lot of it's just going to have to be common sense, but there's definitely going to be some outlines illustrated for each various shooting situation.
Also, let me just say, this is for the upside is that this is probably temporary. I mean, once there's a vaccine in place, once testing is fully implemented, if ever, long run, it should go back to the way it was.
Then it'll be more just like worrying about the flu, the sort of like normal flu that people.
Exactly. Theoretically. So this is maybe a year. We'll have to deal with it for sure, but I don't know if it's permanent change.
Well, hopefully we can go back to the grand tradition of like every set person where we can just go to work sick and, and push through
yeah,
without killing anybody.
Confined spaces, you know, it's like,
yeah, for sure.
Like school children, right?
Let's see, Michael Capuli. How do I pronounce that? Michael
Capuli.
Capuli? Capuli, cool.
All right, can everybody hear me?
Yeah, good to see you.
Great. My question, and thanks for putting this together, Chris, and my question for Jan is for mentorship, kind of like when you have like a trainee or somebody new, what are you like looking for? What are some of the qualities that you look for at first when you like are just trying to get a feel for somebody if they're going to make the cut, I guess?
Yeah, and I do have little tests, and not everybody passes the tests.
Oh, do share. I want to know, what are these tests?
Timeliness, I know, is one of them.
Yes, for sure.
Did I pass, Jan?
I know you're early for everything, like I am. But for example, second AD says, "Oh, I have a school chum that wants to come visit set," and I'm like, "Okay, fine." So guy comes, and because I don't let anybody on my set unless I've met them. So that's the first thing. But this guy I hadn't met, but because he was friends with the AD, I let him on set, and he comes in just when we've started a scene where I have a couple of plants, I have 2 booms up over the sides of the sets, and a wire and a couple of wires, maybe 4 people in the room, and he starts asking questions, like, and it's a tough mix. So I'm like, "Stop talking. I'll talk to you at lunch." And the guy kept asking questions. And I said, "No, I'm really serious." So half a dozen times I'm like, finally I get to shut the fuck up. And he wouldn't. So we get to lunch and I said, "Do you realize that you were within this distance of being thrown off my set because you couldn't take a direction? So if you can't take direction, like shut the fuck up, I'm going to say you failed." And here's the thing, I've been thinking about this and I've been wanting to say it for a long time, is that, it upsets me a lot, but, I have a lot of women get referred to me, and not many women pass. And it's because they come in and it's weird. They will flirt with me or something. And I'm like, whoa. It's weird. It's a weird thing. But I'll give them I'll give them, typically I'd have maybe a half a dozen people out to the loft on a prep day. So I'll come up with several stations of little projects to do. And so I put so with the flirty, whatever. And it's weird because it took me like years to realize that was what was going on, and that this is how they would be with a guy, but they would play that on me. And I was like, it's not working. So I give them the project, and like sometimes the projects are done very well. But the one flirty person, it was a simple assignment, but when I went to use it, it didn't work. It was a very simple thing. A piece of Velcro to put on the headphones so that we could wrap them up with the Velcro at the end of the day. And it was put on the very, very end so that it couldn't really wrap it up. So the person didn't even check it to see whether it would work. So I'm like, that's a fail. Things like, okay, they do a project and then not check with me. How did it work out when you got in the field? Like if you do a second unit with me, like the second unit person didn't get in touch with me and say, "Hey, how did it go? Did you hear anything back from post?" And usually it's no news. And so, you'd say that, this, that, or the other thing. So yeah, they're tests, but when it clicks and they're in.
Well, that's the thing I want to know. When you see somebody doing one of these tasks that you've given them or whatever, and it really looks like they're, maybe doing something even better than you suggested, and done exactly what you wanted and all that, and they seem to have promise, then those are the people that you zero in on, right? Those are the people that pass.
Yeah, I mean, well, if I could jump in, my thing, I want to find people to bring up, and I'm finding it takes a long time, because somebody that you might think that's decent, like after you spend time with them, it's like, oh, well, then they're not picking this up. And then you just wasted kind of a lot of time trying to work with someone. And then it's like, I just want to get faster at it, like finding people. Does that make sense?
Wait, no, I didn't understand.
As far as young sound people, people that might want to start utilitying, or you want to bring somebody up.
Well, in New York, I think they come along all the time, and I think I've never had any trouble finding them.
Where are you based out of, Michael?
Chicago.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so I mean, we're just kind of, we need more crew, and I'm just trying to find good candidates.
that I think there's an inherent difference, I think, between finding people or mentoring people and helping them get their start into whatever direction they want to get to. And then there's a difference between that and finding people to hire to actually say, come here, here's a job, do this job. They're very closely related. I think there's a lot of overlapping moments, but you know, sometimes it's hard to, when you have somebody who shows up for mentorship and that's what they're looking for, they don't necessarily want to get pigeonholed into, you know, I'm going to, you know, there's a lot of cases of mixers bringing up people where they give them a bag and a pole and give them just enough information to do the job. And then that becomes an untenable situation over time. So I think there's an inherent difference between what I think what you're looking for. It sounds like you're looking for bodies to bring in to help get a job done.
Yeah, or just like, you know, maybe people that aren't in a union yet, but like trying to see, you know, PAs or people that might be interested in sound. And
I mean, it's, I mean, you can certainly tell, I think, by people's work ethic very quickly. I think maybe that's, those are the, and anybody else can jump in here anytime, but there's, I think you're looking at basic signs of a good work ethic first. You know, somebody who needs to be there and wants to be there, has the attention span and the aptitude for it. You know, those 4 pillars, that is, they can demonstrate that in very easy tasks very quickly. And then you can decide, okay, one step leads to the next step, which leads to the next step. And you know, you can find out very quickly those people who just don't have the knack for it, or they really just don't want to, they're you know, they don't want to be there necessarily. They're just inertia took them there for whatever reason. But you know, you definitely, when you have a specific job that needs to be done, you want to find those people that excel in that little area, and they have you know, that aptitude, and that they want to be there genuinely.
The ability to anticipate is also really important.
Sure, and the, you know, the mentorship role is more of I remember with my mentorship experience, I was given a front row seat to a very complex filmmaking process on a big studio sequel, and but nothing was required of me to work per se. I was allowed a front row seat to learn and watch the process, and I could kind of dip my toe in and help when they needed me, and when I felt comfortable to do so. But there was, I have to say, when it came to my mentorship experience, there was, I was allowed to really see the forest for the trees. I didn't get kind of stuck in the salt mines at first and just, you know, buried. So, and that I was really thankful for. But that, you know, I hope that shed some light on it. But there's a, you know, an inherent difference between, you know, a mentorship relationship where you're trying to give somebody a wider perspective to let them make choices, and finding people to do a specific job, pull them in, train them up to do this. So,
right. One thing you can, something that Matt said in between what you and Matt had said, if you can watch the person who comes to your set and see what their situational awareness is, see what they're paying attention to, and if they know, and if you can help them a little bit and say, here's what you need to pay attention to, and if they take that, that's great. But some people just get it and they just go, and you've all seen that, I'm sure.
Yeah,
I think it's important.
Yeah, I was done a really big favor. Mark Ulano is my mentor. He's the one that gave me my internship opportunity, and he did me a huge favor at the beginning, you know, because I was a 32-year-old PA when I met him, and he did me the huge favor of saying, look, you're 32 years old, you're not a kid. I'm gonna assume you know how to conduct yourself around people. And that was the understanding from the beginning. So I was just really thankful that I didn't have to feel him, you know, potentially judging me on that stuff. And and he also said, you know, if there's any questions in that regard of where you should be or who you can and can't talk to, you know, feel free to ask. But I'm going to assume you know basic pleasantries and protocol, which was great.
There are people that I've mentored, and my first question when they all come in, because they all want to just pick the stuff up and have it work. And I say, who knows what gain staging is? And it was like, you need to know how to, you got to start this at the bottom, and you need to know how does it work? Just in case it catches on fire, you know which glass to break.
Yeah.
But they didn't want to learn. This was, no, I just want to direct, or I just want to do this. And you're sitting there with a mixer and a recorder and 3 or 4 wireless and a boom pole. And I'm looking down and I'm going, this is wrong. He says, yeah, but I can hear it. Nobody wants to work for them, for their bread. They just want you to give it to them, and it's like they turn on their TV. Whatever the preset is, that's what you watch. So learning the language is very important, because you'll never understand the art if you don't understand the science. You know, 50 years ago, when Jeff and I were kids, it was easy. But now, no, I'm serious.
So true.
You had a Niagara, on, off, record, don't record, blah, blah, blah. And now with all of the new technology, they all end up doing the same thing, but it's, everybody gets to Cleveland a different way.
I think, greetings, Jan. Welcome, welcome, hello.
Hey.
So pleased to talk to you. Tremendous honor. Greetings from London.
Yeah.
Thank you, Judy.
So just throwing in a female perspective on this, one of my things that I find when I try to mentor people, I don't know if you ever experienced it, Jan, or if any of the other ladies can talk about it. Of course, I work with a lot of keen young men. Now, one of their biggest failings is I'll give them an instruction and they think, okay, she didn't really mean that, she meant this. Now, I'm super clear. I need you to do A and B, please do A and B. Don't translate it into Y and Z, because that's not what I asked you to do. And that is a deal breaker for me. They can be as keen as anything, their resumes can be stellar, but if they decide that, well, Judy said that, but I don't think she really meant that, deal breaker.
I think Jan can back you up on that for sure.
Oh, big, one of the biggest young, I mean, this guy was so green, he could barely like stand up straight. So he's doing second boom, and I said, the question was, do you know who's saying ring, ring, ring on set? Because they were doing a phone thing, but they were saying it 3 times. And my goal was to find out who it was and go up to them and say, can you just say ring once? Because it was the last ring was getting stepped on there. And so they ended up going to ask for it. The question was, do you know who's doing it? And because of a past history with the AD department, it was like throwing a grenade into the middle of the room. And there was a whole like AD dust up because he thinks he's going to find out who was. But it was a simple, do you know, yes or no? And so, but it ended up blowing up the set. So yeah, we're all, I think, safe to say we're all very specific.
Yeah, Jan, it was, almost the same kind of crazy thing happened. It was, I asked a guy, we were doing this little movie up in Canada, this little Daniel Day-Lewis, and Daniel's character comes around the corner. He says a line as he comes around the corner. And then Daniel comes out into this main room where my boom off, Linda Murphy was booming on that movie. Anyway, so I said, okay, you got it? You got it? He's just gonna, and he says it right here, and you just follow him. He goes, yeah, I got it. So take one, here it comes, and there he is. And Daniel walks right past, and the guy doesn't move, and I'm like, wait, I thought you said you had that. You knew it. Well, I didn't see him coming, my arm got in the way. My arm was in the way, swear to God. And this was, yeah, not good.
Oh, gosh. Well, cool. Hopefully, thank you all for that input. That's awesome. We have Hardy Willis has had his hand up for a bit. Hardy?
Hey, hey, Jana and Chris. Really want to thank you for putting this on. And my main question was, what do you guys have any tips or tricks or gear purchase decision that you based around maintaining like your ears health throughout your career? I know you talked about how like, you know, you don't listen to music so much to kind of give your ears a break, but like, is there any kind of like regiments or any kind of like, oh, I bought these headphones because they're going to be easier on my ears over the years, and so you know, things like that?
I dry my ears after the shower with, and I bought, when they said Q-tips were going away, I bought a bunch of Q-tips. And I got the high noise headphones. So that allowed me to turn the headphone volume down considerably, because, and even on set, because I can keep the volume very low, and that makes me happy, my ears happy. I stopped going to concerts because why would I go to a concert with earplugs in? Why? So many years ago. So yeah, that's my ear health plan. I don't know if anybody else.
The other thing, I'm sorry. The other thing I'll throw in is, you want to protect your ears, get rid of your Sony 7506s. Throw them out. They suck.
Okay,
they
Eric.
Do. What? You have something to say? I've heard your opinion. Yours don't count. Get yourself a set of Ultrasounds HFI 680s, and you'll never go back.
And no, Eric isn't the dealer anymore, but he used to be.
Very good.
And carry a pair of earplugs with you. You never know when you'll need them.
True. There's some really great earplugs out there now, the custom molded, where you can decide how much filtering you want, that kind of stuff. It's really cool. Let's see. We have a question that was submitted via chat from Xenia Vinogradova, where she asked about the t-shirt rigs on Nicole, or just t-shirt rigs, favorite tips and tricks regarding that, and maybe you can expand on was Nicole's rig, was that to her body or was it to the bra? Do you remember how that was set up?
It was a sports bra,
Mm-hmm.
and the key, I think, for me in terms of wiring, particularly in summer and in sweat things, is to make sure that I get to wire them before they start sweating. Because once the fabric is wet, forget it. So I had her come in dry, and the rig was really, because this was back in the days when the transmitters were not as small as they are now. They were a little bit bigger. So I had a pouch designed so that it wouldn't overheat on her, because her skin's very delicate. So it just was, because I knew it would have to go in the sports bra in the back, run the cable protected by the sports bra and up to the sports bra, was all. Right. And then for him, I think we cut a hole in the side and went into the t-shirt neck, and pushed probably a B6 into because that was the most stable part, just the way it was on him, and I knew he would sweat on his body, so that wouldn't stick. But through that collar in there, and it was fine. No running noise at all from either one.
Ah, very good. Very good. There's another question here from, these are via the chat, Avantika Nimbalker. And she asked, at what point did you start feeling the need for a backup recorder? What point in your career did you start feeling the need for a backup recorder on your cart?
Jeff's
the time in the middle when I ran a second recorder on the cart, and the only time I ever had an issue was because I failed to press the main recorder, because I was pressing two records. I didn't have a remote switch for both of them. So I finally gave that up and realized that I wasn't gaining anything from it, particularly after I got into the Zaxcom stuff that had the SD cards and and everything I had was wireless, boom included. So I decided to double up on my recorder for the bag because I could, and that was fairly an easy decision to get the same recorder for the bag because I could. They were both uh, small enough to be in a bag and or a cart. So, and that's part of the reason that I went with the Nomad anyway, because I could have it matching and have a backup. And I'll tell you what, I only needed it once. I had the recorder go down, and by God, was I glad to have it.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. And the same person had one other question about, you talked about tweaking the mid-range frequencies in your dialogue while mixing. She was curious that if post-production mixers would post-production mixers prefer to have the dialogue untouched? And then she asks, sometimes use high pass. Oh, she sometimes uses high pass filters to get rid of some lows, but she wonders if post prefers having all of it available when they're mixing. Yeah, I mean,
well, in work, I didn't use any EQ after I got to the Oasis, even a high pass or anything. But when I had the audio developments, there was a high pass. I think it was 80 kilohertz, where it was a cutoff just because New York. There's so much low frequency stuff in New York, and none of the voice is really getting down in that. So I just put that on as a matter of course.
Yeah, I remember doing some dialogue editing when I first started, and some of the first stuff that I put up in my little Pro Tools studio, the cones on the speakers would physically move back and forth. You could see them because of all of that 40 hertz, 80 hertz stuff pumping through the speakers with no roll off. And it's like, so the first thing you have to do is roll that off if it's just dialogue. It's pretty amazing though, just the pole handling noise, that kind of stuff would physically make the cones move. You could see them. It was
Chris, the general consensus in our other Zoom get-togethers, certainly with the post people, was that, and again, each one of them has a different idea, but the general consensus is to be as light-handed as possible with EQ, because you're a lot of times people go way too deep with EQ because they're trying to make it sound good for their headphones on location, right. Not taking into account all sorts of other factors. I think throughout my career, I was fairly light on the EQ, but it is important to get rid of low end right. And all the harmonics and the other things that happen.
Yeah, I'm the same way. Pretty light on the EQ. If I have 2 or 3 people on labs, and I might have one person on a tie rig and another person under a sweater, then I might, I might tick up the person under the sweater just a smidge so that they match the tie rig.
Yeah, so to make both of them sound bad, right?
Right. But exactly. But I but I would also make sure that the ISOs are untouched. The ISOs stay untouched. It's just the mix that EQ would go to. At least for me. It is getting it's 9:48 now, and so we've been going at it almost 2 hours. We should probably think about wrapping it up. Is there any final questions or final thoughts? Jan, thank you so much for doing this for us. We really appreciate it.
Total thrill, and I'm so delighted with the turnout. I haven't been scrolling through the various pages, but I see Wits here. Holy crap! Well, this is awesome.
91 people, Jan.
Yeah, we hit the 100-person limit about maybe 10-15 minutes into it, and it's fluctuated in the 90s since.
You're a superstar, Jan.
You beat me to it, Matthew.
And we did.
Said you're a superstar.
Sorry, I missed what you said, Maddie.
You're a superstar.
Oh.
And I want to thank you for leading the way for not just women sound people, but also the rest of us. Certainly in your battle for higher kit rentals has definitely paved the way for basically everyone else, certainly in New York. So yeah. You say I have brass balls, you have brass ovaries.
Tits, baby.
Those two.
Awesome.
I love it.
Yeah,
I love it.
God love you all.
Anyway, Jan, you're a rock star. Thanks.
Oh, thanks, Whit. I'm so glad you were able to come. Now, Whit he's the guy that I call if I've got a political thing that's conflummoxing me. I can call Whit, I think, 24/7. And I think you call me too. We pick each other's brain a lot, and I so adore you, Whit.
Yeah, we've worked through a lot of things.
Yeah, we have. Awesome. And one of the ways I learned to grow some was and this I went through this with Whit. I got an agent at one point. It cost me 10 and 15%, whether it was kid or labor, and to pay somebody put a whole new seriousness on it for me. It didn't last for a very long time, but having myself a paid pit bull to go at it for me taught me that I could be my own pit bull. And that helped a lot.
Yeah, we both learned that.
Yeah, we did. And that was, Whit and I decided for a while to do that. And I think Jeff came along for a little bit, but I needed to learn to be a little tougher, and watching somebody be tougher and being an asshole about it. I couldn't ever really go to asshole, but.
Well, Jan, all I learned was that I was already as tough as I could be, which was not really very tough. So I just said, why give an agent money to be tough in a way which wasn't really helping anyway. So.
Jan and I learned to be better negotiators.
Yes, I know.
And that I could say, yeah, I'll get back to you on Monday, but I could buy the time to figure it out. You don't have to answer right away. That was a great lesson.
Yeah.
So more money for everybody.
That was taking notes.
Value.
Awesome.
Cool. All right. Well, thank you so much. If there's any last goodbyes, I really appreciate everybody joining us. Thank you, Jan.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Jan.
Thanks, Chris, for putting it together.
We love you. Thanks, Chris. Thanks, Jan.
Thanks,
See you guys.
Now we can talk about you behind your back, Chris.
Thanks, everyone, for being here.
Wonderful to see you, Sean. Really honored.
All the best, Jan, in your retirement.
Yeah, John Garrett, we don't get to see too much of him.
Yeah, this is all you see of me now.
Okay, John. Well, short and sweet.
All right. Much love all around.
Todd Rexon. Holy mackerel.
Hi, Renaud.
Fine. How are you?
I'm good.
Great to see you, my friend. Thank you, Jan.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you so much. I love this community. All right, so I keep getting texted. They're shopping for my Instacart. Okay, fine.
Thanks, Jan. Thanks, Jan. Good to see you. Bye.
All right.
Bye, Sean.
Thanks, Jen. All the best.
Be well, Judy.
Thank you, Jen. That was fantastic. Good for you.
Good questions. Really good questions. Awesome.
They're dropping like flies. Bing, bang, boom. Hey, Anna.
Thank you. All right. Lovely. I'm sort of watching everybody as people leave. The other people on the other pages come up.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of neat to see.
Yeah, awesome.
Greg Sextro. Good Lord.
Nice to kind of half meet you. Ellie, Caroline. It's good to have more chicks. Good. Be strong.
Hey, Jan.
Hey, how you doing, Greg?
Michael.
Pretty good. Hanging tight here in Brooklyn.
Michael,
yeah.
see Bruno. Say hello to him for me. Where'd Wetzler go? He left? Cool, we can talk about him now.
Eric, what were those headphones you were talking about?
Ultrasound. HFI. I'm not sure the model number, but the prefix is HFI, not the pros. 580, 680.
680. 680.
They're about $100. I got them 15, 18 years ago from Marty Attias at a place in Washington. He says, here, take them home. Listen to them. If you don't like them, give me money. If you don't like them, send them back. I never sent them back. And when I had the shop here in Florida, and I was never a dealer, contrary to what what's his foot said. Guys say, what should I get? I said, don't get those. He says, yeah, but everybody uses them. I says, because they make you crazy. It sounds like you have tap gun screws going into your ears and they're too tight. Put on the HFIs, relearn how to listen. That's all I'm going to tell you. And you'll go.
One thing to watch for is they have a lot of different models. So the HFI 680 is the one Eric's talking about.
And the nice part about it is the cord coming out of the headphone is only about 4 feet long. I said, well, yeah, but they give you a 12-foot extension that plugs in so you can lie on the couch and put them on.
It appears to be discontinued, that model, 680.
What's the next thing up in the HFI or down?
Well, they have a 580.
Yeah, that's the.
Now, I don't think, if I recall, because I've had a couple different ones, I don't think the 580 was quite as good. But they do vary, and there are some models that have a lot of plastic sound that bother you when they're moving. The 680s, I've never had that with them. They work well.
The other ones with the plastic are the pros. These are mine. See? And I cut the cord down because if you're doing bag work, what you need is 4 feet. It'll teach you how to listen again. Seriously.
Cool. Well, thank you.
You can actually hear the room that you're in. When you put on the 7506s, all you hear is the sound of the voice, but you have no idea where you are.
All right. Cool. I'm going to go ahead and shut the room down, but thank you all so much for coming. You guys are the late, the late crowd.
Thank you.
Cool.
Thank
We'll put another one together. Hopefully we'll do a couple of these a month. So
I noticed you recording them. Are those recordings ending up anywhere?
yes, I'm going to post them for the people who couldn't get in the room. So they'll make their way onto the Facebook groups and stuff.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Cheers. Y'all take it easy.
Take it easy, Chris.
Bye.
Bye.